What's up, Penn State fans? It's BWI Live Wednesday, October 29th, the final Wednesday edition of October. Not sure where this month or season has gone. For Penn State, unfortunately, it has not gone the way that they wanted it to. That's Thomas Frank Carr. I'm Greg Pickle from BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. The latest coaching search updates from Nate Bauer posted overnight at BWI. You can go join right now for $1 for the first week, and then it's billed annually from there during our coaching search special. Nate has some info right around dinner time on Tuesday, and then some more overnight over on the Lions Den message board, which is a premium spot.
I missed this one.
You get access to with your subscription, so sign up today, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Yeah, it was a good one, T. Frank. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling it. I'm in the pocket. And also, like, I know that I'm breaking my one rule of, like, when something's good, don't acknowledge it, because then you just point it out. Like, I love the new intro music. I can't stop moving. It's like for free music I found on the internet, so it's royalty free and I can use it anywhere. Kind of slaps. So, like, I noticed this watching back some of the shows, trying to do some editing. Like, I'm always bobbing my head as we start the show. So anyway, hello everyone. Hi Greg, how you doing?
I'm well, T. Frank. No better way to get started than with some good tunes. And speaking of noise and sound, Ryan Day, the head coach of Ohio State, spoke with the media on Tuesday in Columbus. So he still has a Tuesday news conference routine. Penn State, obviously, under James Franklin, went from Tuesday previously in his tenure to Monday. So you heard from Terry Smith Monday and on yesterday's BWI Live. Today we'll talk about what Ryan Day had to say. And I guess there's really no other place to start but with the Jim Knowles conversation. I didn't write much about it over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, T. Frank, because I didn't really think he said anything. You know, it felt a little headline grabby, I guess you could say, maybe, to go too deep into his comments. Because, I mean, everything he said was true. Like, their separation was abrupt. Yes, we all know that. We lived it, obviously, at this time, or, about 2-3 months from now last year. Or I guess at the start of this year would be a more accurate way of putting it. But it was abrupt. They haven't had much contact since. Why would they? Like, what purpose would it serve for Jim Knowles and Ryan Day to be talking after Jim Knowles left Ohio State for Penn State? So that was what it was. There was not any animosity. There was not anything negative. He said Jim Knowles did a great job while he was at Ohio State on numerous occasions. So the question, obviously, to me, T. Frank, is we knew how Ryan Day was going to handle this publicly. But privately, can't you help but wonder if there'll be a little bit more added motivation to maybe try and put up some more points on Jim Knowles Saturday at Ohio Stadium?
Yeah, and, something we've been talking about on this end, but Ohio State also coming off a bye. So, they have time to dig back into what their notes on Jim Knowles' defense, right? And they have institutional knowledge of what Knowles likes to do and the weak points and all those aspects of this offense or this defense that I think have been apparent. Like the obvious things are obvious about this defense this year, but there are probably other structural things that they know about that can stress this defense from a communication standpoint or from whatever other aspect they know, and they could take some extra time to implement those things or add some tweaks, and we don't know about those yet. Like watching film, we're going to discuss Ohio State in a little bit. That's always I've now added a category into my analysis of the unknown. What is the thing that they are working on this week that we haven't seen on film? Because we go so much off of, and coaches, everybody goes so much off of what you see on film. This year, Penn State in particular has had so many moving variables as where they haven't had in the past. And Ohio State has that this week as well. So this is going to be, I think, an exciting matchup to figure those things out, even if the end result is not in that much question. It's how we get there. What are the things going to be that lead to that? And if you're a football nerd, if you're into those things, I'm going to be writing about this week at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. I already put my thoughts out about the offense on Monday. Going to be doing the defense today and tomorrow.
So I'll throw another question out to you. Speaking of something you brought up there, T. Frank, we know the history and conversation that have been had surrounding James Franklin's Penn State teams coming off a bye week. We don't know what a Terry Smith team coming off a bye week looks like. We know that he has a second-time starting quarterback in Ethan Grunkemeyer going to make another road start, this time at Columbus Stadium for a big noon kickoff Ohio Stadium in Columbus, rather, for a big noon kickoff on Fox. So we know that. They're hoping that Vega Wani will be back. They're hoping that Zariah Fisher will be back. Time will tell on that. I'm still trying to get a read on Terry Smith's injury update news
Right.
conference setup. So like it seems like he's a bit more blunt. Like when he says he has no update on Jackson Smolik, that would imply to me that it's maybe not great news for him in terms of his outlook.
Still
for
no
this weekend.
information, right? Like it's still, I'm not going to tell you, but it's just less words if I'm not going to tell you.
Right, but then with Van Galwani and with Zariah Fisher, a little bit more blunt about believing those guys will be available this week. So we'll see. Obviously, we won't know. We'll get a little bit of an update when the availability report comes out on Saturday morning at the Horseshoe, and then go from there. But it'll be interesting to me to see what Penn State did during its bye week, what kind of fixes it implemented. It did not go on the road recruiting, as you guys, I'm sure, discussed on last Thursday's show. So all of its time was spent in the building, basically, for the last 2 weeks, getting ready for this game. And I have no doubt that Penn State will take some new approaches to things at Ohio Stadium. The question, of course, as we've seen so far this year throughout a 3-4 start, doesn't matter in the end what way they go about things. And Ryan Day, and I'll wrap this portion of the show up with this because it was really about the last thing he said. He said, Ethan Grunkemeyer came up, and Ethan had said earlier Tuesday morning that, he grew up dreaming of playing for Ohio State, of course, as an Ohio kid. The Buckeyes never offered. Ryan Day was very complimentary of him, kind of talked around the part of the question that asked if they recruited him to be a Buckeye, which they didn't offer him. So that tells you kind of all you need to know. So, I'm curious to see what Penn State brings into this game that's different at Ohio Stadium. But one thing Ryan Day kept pounding the table on was that this team is talented, and we thought this was going to be a matchups game back in August. And he said, we don't circle opponents or games on the schedule, but who amongst us was not circling Penn State, Ohio State on November 1st throughout January, February, well, maybe not so much January, but late January at least, through the UCLA game and then through the Northwestern game. And then suddenly things took a turn that none of us saw coming. But I think as much as his team needs to hear it, as he feels the need to say it, he believes this team is talented, this Penn State team is talented as any in the country. So I guess my question to you is, are there any matchups you see, and we're going to get deeper into this, but just as a preview to the conversation we'll have later in the show, do you see any matchups that should jump off the page in terms of maybe the top one Penn State has to win to have any chance to just keep this game close, let alone win it?
Yeah, and I'm gonna. My knee-jerk reaction is to go to the secondary because I think that's going to be a fun matchup. I think that should be a battle. But to the way you phrase it, Penn State needs to win. They need to win in the trenches on the D line. They need to figure out a way to use their personnel better. Because if you're talking about Jim Knowles, the one thing I think that was a very miscalculated decision was to try and integrate this defensive style with these defensive linemen. And youth is part of it, but also just a mismatch in personnel. That is something that they've tried to work through, and having a bye week. And this is the thing. It's like kind of the same conversation we've had with Andy Kotelnicki is like the pendulum has swung too far.
Right.
We just like the overreaction, the anger, the vitriol at the name that's close to the top as you can get. And you cut the head off the snake. James Franklin is gone. So who's the next person to blame for this disaster? And it's the coordinators. Jim Knowles is not a bad defensive coordinator. There is ample evidence that he has created very good defenses over time and that he is a creative person that will find solutions and will craft defenses around his personnel. That is, again, something that happened at Ohio State when he wasn't able to use some of the schemes and personnel that he did previously. Right. So, like, it just takes time. Like, that takes time when plan A doesn't work and now you got to go to plan B. The difference is, like, you can still win at Ohio State when plan A isn't working. You can't really win at Penn State when you don't have the same margin of error, when you have less diverse talent. And I think that's the biggest difference is Ohio State's talent previously at the school, even if it was underperforming before Knowles got there, it was still talented enough and diverse enough in its skill set that it could fit this style of defense. Penn State, the way that they've recruited defensive linemen, not being able to get some of those difference makers with size and athleticism, they didn't have the diversity to pivot to this defense the way that Ohio State had previously under Knowles. And so, I understand the complexity and not playing fast, and that's fair, and like that's something that's come up multiple times, but that's like erasing the problems instead of like the core issue up front. And to me, like it has been consistent since the very first snap of the season that has been a problem with the defensive lineman up front. So yeah, I think that's the major matchup that Penn State has to contend with and find a solution for in this game is that defensive line. And then everything can kind of, you're not going to relax in this game, but you don't have to, you're not on pins and needles every single play if you're a linebacker or a safety, thinking you've got to clean something up that's breaking into the secondary if you have more support up front. So, like, it starts in the trenches in this game, as it always does in football, but specifically with the problems on this defense there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We've heard Terry Smith since the first news conference he held as Penn State's interim head coach talking about this idea that they need to be better up front. And I think we've all seen it over the course of the first 7 games of the year. And certainly they have spent the last 2 weeks trying to figure out a way to fix it. Can they? Will it make a difference? We'll have to wait and see. Ohio State has some question marks about their offensive line. It was a little refreshing to read the Columbus stories coming out of Columbus this week and see how much football talk there was. No, certainly we're going to get into a lot of that here, but I know that, certainly so many are focused on the coaching search, which again, if you want the intel and conversation about that, check out Tuesday's BWI Live and also visit BlueWhiteIllustrated.com for the latest intel on the hunt to replace James Franklin. T. Frank, it's time to preview Penn State practice tonight.
You gotta win, goddamn you, Tyler. You gotta win. To the corner.
So, you all cannot go to Penn State practice tonight, but you can be at Beaver Stadium when Penn State returns there next Saturday at a time to be determined. We don't know yet when that game will kick against Indiana. On Friday, the NBA Cup comes to Philadelphia. Tickets are $27 for the Celtics 76ers matchup at Xfinity Mobile Arena. The lowest get-in price for the Lions-Hoosiers matchup is $35. All of those prices include fees. You heard that right. You won't be surprised at checkout, and you can use promo code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase at checkout. My favorite part of the Game Time app are seeing views from your seat and the all-in pricing feature. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code ON3 ON3 for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. So like we said, Penn State not back in Beaver Stadium for another week, but we will be back on the Penn State practice field tonight. This will be the first time to see the Nittany Lions at work since the bye week practice, which I believe you guys talked about it somewhat last week's show, but did not get a chance to look at the offense. T. Frank, they were working behind closed doors during an install period. So I assume the first thing you're going to do when you walk through those either Haluba Hall doors or Lasch Building gate is to look and see if the offense is working in a place you can see it or not.
Yeah, and so we're going to be. It's supposed to rain, but just a little bit this afternoon. I think. I don't think it's supposed to be an extensive rainfall. So
no,
that's usually
coming Thursday. That's coming Thursday.
Yeah, and the leaves are all over. I haven't had a chance to go out and rake the leaves. It's going to be a nightmare. Get them out of the gutters.
I was just thinking that I'm going to have to spend the majority of the day post-show here getting that taken care of because there's only so many daylight hours left in the day on October 29th. And there's a big old rainstorm. Thank God Penn State, Ohio State's not playing tomorrow. But
right. Yeah. By the way, so the reason I'm not going to be able to get to him is we're going to do a special episode with our sister site over at Letterman Row, which is coming up later this week. Spencer Holbrook and I are going to sit down and talk about the game. I believe we're going to be doing that sometime after the show, and then we'll have it out either Thursday or Friday, maybe tonight, depending on everything. But of course, practice is tonight, and that's what you asked about. Yeah. So to the original point there, if we're outside, then I always go to the offense, and Fitz always goes to the defense, and Nate bounces in between. That's how we structure what we do at open practice. So I have always gone to the offense, and last week I felt very lonely over on that offensive field with nobody there, so I went over to the defense. Right. And it's going to be because there's multiple layers to this, right? So there's offensive line. Cooper Cousins, Venga Ioane, they're a status. Jackson Smolik came out of the game. We all saw he had a wrap or something on his wrist after the game. And so what's that situation like? That's something you can't hide unless he's not out there. And then, of course, he's not out there. Then we're going to have the conversation with Terry Smith about he's not out there. And then we'll have the same conversation that Terry Smith just says there's no change in his status because he's not out there. So, yeah, there's multiple layers to that being kind of a circular conversation. And this is what I'm curious of. Look, if you're going to spend time installing your offense inside, away from everybody, you're not going to then show it this evening.
Right.
But there are aspects where, like, even previously, if you're paying attention, you know enough about football, you can pick up on some of the things that they're doing, some of the things they're practicing that week, especially in the passing game. And so, yeah, those are all things I'm fascinated to know about and learn more about. I'm curious, like that closed part of the practice last week, I'm still fascinated with. What are they installing? Was it an extension of the two quarterback system?
I think they did it just for you. I think they did it just to get your mind racing.
Probably. Because this is the thing is like you're going back to training camp, right? So when you're installing something new, you are going through walkthrough, you are going slow, you're explaining the concept, from what you did in the classroom, and now you're trying to apply it. So you're back to ground, like basics on learning. And you need those 2 weeks to get all these things refined. So they got to spend some time on whatever it is this week as well. And so, like, this was an intentional 2-week period to try and install some things they wanted to install. And maybe it is just going back to a part of the playbook they abandoned earlier and they're, like, reinstalling it. I don't know. That's the fascinating part of, like, is to not have it out in front of us. Like, it is clearly something that they needed to go back to the nuts and bolts walkthrough instead of just running routes and kind of those things. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what we see from the offense for sure.
Yeah, I'm not going to be shocked if it's nothing. Like, for a couple of the reasons you just stated. Number one, there's not really any advantage to giving Ohio State a heads up about Van Gogh being out there. And to the install part of it, is part of the install something you have to do with your backup quarterback situation because of the situation with Jackson Smolik. To your point, the offense is available to see tonight. The questions about Smolik's status is going to come up. So not saying it's a guarantee they won't be out there, but certainly it would not shock me if that is the case. But that is obviously number one on the list of things to watch tonight. The point is that things have been tried. I miss Rob. So take this way. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just think that he's pointing out, like, whatever it is, they're trying something different, and so I think that's a valid point. That's kind of the thing to underline here is whether or not it's something wildly new or different. They are trying to do something different in the offense, which does need it.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. Notes are up at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com later today following practice in State College, whether it's inside Haluba Hall or outside on the Lasch Building practice fields. Beyond the offense, which is, again, the biggest curiosity everyone is going to want to see today, I think more than anything, when you flip over to the defense tee, Frank, you start with Fisher, Zariah Fisher, obviously. Will we see him out there after he did not play the second half of the Iowa game? I mean, coming off the bye week, I think it's maybe a safe bet. We'll have to wait and see. But beyond that, it's the conversation we're going to have a little bit later in the show. Where are the young guys that Terry Smith keeps mentioning at the prompting of reporters? Of course, he's not bringing them up unsolicited or unprompted. But where are those guys at in their particular rotations, in their drill lines, things like that? As Penn State looks for a spark here with 5 games to go.
Yeah, this is the thing that has to get fixed. So we talk about the defensive line, and there's no fixing the personnel there because having seen some of the young guys, they're not going to help you. Even if they are bigger bodied guys, even if they do technically or theoretically have the size to be impact players, they're not positionally ready to make an impact. And then you go to linebacker, and linebackers, if they're aggressive and they can play through contact. Because part of the issue is that, like, it's not just that the defensive linemen are getting moved on double teams. It's that they're not holding up guards and centers from getting to the second level and attacking linebackers in space. That was happening anyway previously, but Tony Rojas was doing a much better job of playing through that contact and making plays. They don't have a guy that has the size, athleticism, strength, and confidence right now to go do those things. Dom DeLuca has 3/4 of it, but he just doesn't have the strength to play through contact. His technique is decent, like his positioning on the field, like all these things that he's supposed to be. Like, the reason that he was a trusted number 3 is because he does all the things correctly, but the end result is obviously unacceptable because he can't play through contact and then get to the ball carrier. They need to find somebody who can. And so that's where these young guys come in, whether it's athleticism with a guy like Cam Smith, who I think is still undersized and looks like a safety, if he can play with more athleticism and speed, or an Alex Tash, who is that big, fast, strong, has the, again, the theoretical size. Does he have the confidence? Does he have the maturity in the weight room to be that guy? And those are the answers to this question, because it seems that they're not going to put Keon Wiley at will. And I don't know what that says about Keon Wiley. I don't know what that says about their will situation or whatever else is in the defense that they're trying to protect there. But that has been unbelievably consistent. Is when he's been on the field, he's been the Sam linebacker, the opposite side from Dom DeLuca. And so that's another question. Does that change this week? Is he one of those guys? We haven't seen any indication of it yet. But that would be the main thing. And Z-Man says Anthony Specca. Anthony Specca is a Mike. He's been playing the middle linebacker position behind Amari Campbell. That's not a solution here that we've seen as a reasonable or viable situation. So I get that Specca is a good football player. Again, they can experiment with those things. Anything's on the table. But if you're saying a young guy that is on the cusp and maybe you don't trust fully, and a guy who's not the best athlete in the world to play in space, it's not a great fit. He's a Mike linebacker, and I think he could be a good Mike linebacker at Penn State, but I don't know that he's going to be a guy that is roaming the field or used as the blitzer, the athlete, everything that Anthony Specca has been.
I think that's probably the thing that frustrates Penn State fans, and I'm sure you guys and gals will let us know in the comment section here in a sec. But I think that's probably what frustrates Penn State fans the most, is that there are all these guys. Some we're talking about, some we'll talk about later. Some maybe we won't get to, but they'll come up in the comments or on the podcast comments later today. But there's all these guys on the Penn State roster that we've heard about for one reason or another throughout the last year, and as recruits in some instances. And I think that there's an idea of what they could be and a unwillingness to maybe realize that some of those guys probably aren't ready for prime time the way that fans think they might be. And that's why they're not on the field. Don't get me wrong. I'm at this point, to the point you just made, trying anything is worth it when you're amid a 4-game losing streak. I thought Terry Smith was very blunt about that answer on Monday when he said, basically was like, look, when you've lost 4 games in a row in this profession, like, you are looking for everything you can to stop that bleeding. I don't know. Terry Smith has been so successful. I don't know when he was at Temple if he lost 4 games in a row before coming to Penn State. But, this is a guy who, from his time playing to his time at Gateway to his time at Temple, I'm sure maybe there was a 4-loss streak in there. I don't know. But I just have a hard time believing a lot of the guys on this staff have ever experienced 4-game losing streaks that look very likely to turn into 6. And so if you, at the very least, don't think that these guys are doing whatever they can, including playing whoever they can, to get this fixed, I just don't think that's an accurate way of looking at the situation. But you have some other things to take into account. Guys might not be ready, and you think that they are, and you put them on the field. You can make the argument that, well, it can't be any worse than it is. It can be. Trust me, it can be.
Yeah, Steven said that in the chat, and I wanted to address that. It absolutely can be worse, because if you're there's a difference between slowing somebody down because you're in the right gap and you don't make the play, and being on the wrong part of the field and not being in your gap. That's how you get 60-yard touchdown runs. And that is a part of the fear that all coaches have. Even the best teams don't want to flip out a starter they've seen and the devil they know for something that is maybe a little more unpredictable in a starter that they haven't tested yet, especially in these big games. All coaches, to a certain degree, have a level of conservatism in them that fans don't, because fans don't have any real stakes. Like, their livelihood, their reputation is not on the line the same way a coach's is. Now, your pride and your identity and all those things that come in with being a fan, absolutely. But there's another level when you're the coach, when you're the one making the decision. You have to live with the fallout of making those changes, and coaches are just so very slow to do those things because there are real consequences when you do that. To the player that you've benched, if they're not confident to begin with and now their confidence is tanked, you probably can't go back to that other player. So now you're stuck in a situation. So there is a kind of there is a situation where you have made it worse, and there is no real improvement at that point.
Yeah, it's almost like you've made it worse, and then you also have made the thing that you started with worse as well. So it's like a double-edged sword, potentially. And so I just think that's where it's hard. But no, I get it. Like, try this guy, try that guy. What can it hurt? It could hurt plenty. But I think, you want to move into this young player conversation, T. Frank?
Yeah, we're basically there, right? Yeah, we're having that conversation.
Seems like, So let's move to that part of the show, the freshman underclassmen who could see more playing time. I think the hard part of this for me is, again, the so if you could help me out with the button clicking, that'd be great. But I think the thing that really stands out to me when you have this conversation is, yes, Penn State has guys that wants to play more, but there's two things that are working against it here to some degree, or at least for this particular game at Ohio State. Is that some of the guys you might want to play, are you going to burn a red shirt just for the sake of burning a red shirt? I think Penn State has to figure that out. And then from there, if you have guys who have if they have 3 games left, 4 games left, you have 5 games left in the season as we head into Penn State, Ohio State. So how do you want to utilize those guys to set up your team for the most success it can have this year, those guys for the best career they can have, because Penn State's coaches all had a hand in recruiting these guys here. They still have some, obviously, desire to not torpedo their career in any way that, they don't have to. There's a reality that if you are, maybe you're retained by the next head coach and your decision about roster management this year impacts you next year. Same thing if you would leave this to join James Franklin if he gets a job somewhere and someone that you recruited at Penn State on the roster now transfers there. I mean, there's a lot at play here beyond just throw these guys on the field and let's see what happens, because it can't be any worse than it is.
Yeah, and I think I think the part there that I'm struggling with is what's more valuable. So Tyseer Denmark, has already redshirted. He is somebody who should see the field in these situations because there's not any downside to him, seeing the field. Same thing with a Cooper Cousins if he's healthy. But the question is Cam Smith, right? At linebacker. Is he burning his red shirt? Is he going to play enough this year for him that if he does want to transfer, that there is valuable tape out there that some team would want to take him, or putting him out there and having him look bad because he's not ready? Does that hurt his opportunities where he could just rest on, hey, I was a high 3-star linebacker, maybe a 4-star linebacker, a Maryland or Rutgers, one of these regional teams might want him in the Big Ten, and that is now you do, to that point, that's what's on the line for these players, and the coaches are not going to do that to sacrifice anyone and anything for the sake of making it closer, right? Getting closer to the final goal. I don't believe that that's something that they're going to do, again, if those players aren't ready to succeed. And so that's really, to me, what's the balance of the probabilities here for some of these guys. And I know fans, they want these players to stay, and they want them to have a reason to stay, and that feels a little blackmail-y almost, of play them all so they all will stay. And I don't know that that's not necessarily how it's going to happen, because those players are going to transfer one way or another. And are you doing right by the parents, the families, all those variables beyond just the X's and O's decision?
Yeah, I'm curious how many conversations Terry Smith had in this regard during the bye week, in addition to his coordinators and, more importantly, the position coaches. Because, I mean, look, if a family says, hey, if you think my son can play, and we don't really care if he plays in 3 games, 4 games, 5 games, whatever it is, we want to play if you think he is ready to play, then okay. Conversely, if someone says the opposite, then okay. It's the ones that maybe are in the middle ground, like a Yamir Joseph, who was a player Terry Smith mentioned on Monday as a guy that they could play more. Well, he's at 3 games right now. And again, to the point I made earlier, you have 5 to go. So he can play in 1 more, and then the 5th would burn his red shirt. So at this point, I think you're far enough along, T. Frank, and he's made enough of an impact early this year that I don't have an issue with doing it if that's the route Penn State goes. Kobe Howard, kind of in the same boat with him. If you end up doing it, fine, so be it. The fact that Cam Smith was on the field for one play, I think, when Dom DeLuca got hurt earlier this year, that was an unfortunate use of a game. But yeah, it is a interesting position to be in. And you're right, it starts with Denmark and Cooper Cousins, because those are the guys who already they're at the point now where second year in a program, just go for it at this point. So, and Cousins, I think, is, you can play if he's healthy and he's ready to go play. There's no eligibility conversations to be had with those two guys. It's the class of 2025 guys. So, the names that were mentioned on Monday, Cam Smith and Alex Tash at linebacker, Kobe Howard, talking specific 2025 guys at receiver, and then Yamir Joseph in the secondary. At this point, I think More likely than not that probably all of them burn their red shirt. You think that's fair?
I struggle with that. I think the linebackers are the conversation here. I'd pick one and really hammer home as much information, as much time on task coaching as you can with one of those guys, because 6 here, 6 there, you're getting to a dozen. You're not actually making a whole. I don't know if that made any sense of what I was trying to say, but if you split the reps, you're going to get half the impact on these players. And so if you're shooting for upside here, my concern would be Cam Smith is just a different version of Dom DeLuca, where he's not big enough and strong enough right now. So Alex Tash would be the guy early on that had the linebacker instincts and has more size, bigger frame, naturally stronger, I think, at the point of contact that we've seen in his career, and is a blitzer, a guy that I think you can do a couple of different things with. And I don't know, maybe I'm just playing off the star ranking or what I saw in high school, but I feel like you got to just pick one of these guys. And then from there, maybe we're not paying enough attention to the class of 2024 in this discussion of freshmen, redshirt freshmen as well. I don't know what it would look like. What I saw from him in the spring wasn't better than anything else. But if you don't have Cooper Cousins and Nolan Ritchie continues to struggle mightily, is Egan Boyer a right tackle opportunity? Is Garrett Sexton an opportunity there?
Right.
This is now we're now into kind of silly ideas. This is more of the emergency situation. And I know what everyone in chat is saying is you lost 4 games. You're already in the emergency situation. Having seen these guys play, they're not demonstrably better than what's already out there. Now, it's the question of, do they develop during the playing time? And that is a significant gamble on how a player reacts to failure, because they are going to fail, especially if we're talking about against Ohio State. They're going to fail. And so does that tank their confidence, or do they grow and learn through those moments, and do they respond? And I think everyone sees this like Madden, where if you're out there, you're gaining EXP, and you're just going to level up your pass blocking, or you're going to level up your run blocking awareness. That's not how it works for everybody. For some people, yes, that's what you need. I don't know how, each individual player responds. And I think the coaching staff probably has a better idea of how those guys have responded to failure, because they've seen them in practice going up against the starters and have a better idea of what it looks like. But another guy I want to highlight here, and I'm now chumming the water, Greg. What's going on with Quentin Martin? What's going on with Quentin Martin? And Corey Smith is a good running back. I still think the size and strength issue is a reasonable thing of he's a great running back, but is he going to break tackles? And that's the problem that they have outside of Katron Allen. Quentin Martin, the slash athlete, fine. I don't care anymore. Play him at wide receiver. Whatever. That's where I think I'm at in terms of what am I willing to move off of? Quentin Martin as a slash athlete in this offense would have been helpful with all the things that they wanted to do. And they have decided not to use him. I don't know why. And, that's another area where what don't we know about his health or whatever behind the scenes. But if he's healthy and we've seen him out there practice, why not? Why not build a package for him to do the things you were asking Traber Pena to do earlier in the year?
Yeah, it's a fair question. And I think that health one is probably the one that is a potential hang up. I mean, I think we heard about that RB3 room between guys not being available for practice for injury reasons or whatever it may be, guys not being consistent on the practice field, losing them opportunities on the game field. I mean, yeah, it would be interesting to see him or any of those guys have a role. And perhaps to the conversation we had earlier, maybe that's what Penn State was trying to get ready for during the Tuesday practice of its bye week. Maybe not. Again, that's kind of the fun of discussing all this stuff, is that it's hard to say whether it's something for Corey Smith, whether it's something for Quentin Martin, whether it's something for Cam Wallace. What is Andy Kotelnicki have up his sleeve that he was going to think about and break out for this Penn State-Ohio State game?
Rob asked this question. He says, why is the number 4 receiver in the class the one that's getting attention? The first 3 are MIA. So the first 3, let me just make sure, because I've got 2 of them loaded in my brain, but I just want to make sure I have them all 3 ready here to go. So Lyric Samuel is, again, not necessarily big enough at this point to contribute to the offense. That has been pretty clear. And then Jeff Exeter got here late. He's 220 pounds. I don't know anything about him, truthfully. And then you have Matt Otten, who, from a positional standpoint, his skills are incredibly raw. Like, they were not there the last time we saw him for a significant period of time. And during the season, you're focusing on the starters in the 2 deep. Some of these guys have been working on the practice squad. And like, you can toil and labor down there to the point that you get then moved up, but none of them have. Like, again, we are using the last 4 games to decide definitively that these coaches are dumb, is what in this conversation we're doing. Is like, none of them are getting any better. Like, there's obviously talent there that you're not using, et cetera, et cetera. They have been a highly successful staff for many years, and the wheels fell off this year. So I'm not going to be the person who sits here and says that all these things are now like valid criticisms because of the last 4 games. Like, there is a body of work that exists where they have made good decisions with players, and they have not put players out there to fail on national television in front of millions of people. Kobe Howard was the most physically and mentally ready player on the roster because he is a good receiver and positionally has the skills. Plus, he came in at the right size and strength. That's why we're talking about him. Recruiting is a bit of a wild card. Like, he was injured a lot of his high school career, so he came in as the number 4 in his class in perception. But, you found a hidden gem. So, like, don't discount that. Like, don't then say on the backside that's a negative because you found a hidden gem. Like, you do need to then remember this staff was really good at talent evaluation. Like, on the way out the door, don't forget all the good things that had them here for 12 years. So, we do need to protect against some of these things. Or at least I feel like it's necessary in this losing streak to be like, don't forget all the things that built this into a point where you got to be disappointed with the end result.
Right, and I think that is a good thing for everyone to remember. We might clip that and just play that on loop for like at the top of every hour for between now and the end of November because, I just that's the thing I struggle with the most is the idea that this Penn State staff has willingly put itself in a position to lose 4 games in a row and likely 6 because it is refusing to play guys who are ready and more talented, and they're keeping guys on the field otherwise instead. I just have a hard time believing that. But I realize that is where most of the fan base is at this point. Only so much you can say to combat that other than it is what it is. So we'll see. We'll see what Penn State does at Ohio State. It will be interesting both from a personnel usage standpoint and from a play design standpoint on offense and defense, what new wrinkles they have, what things they throw at Ohio State, what Terry Smith might try and do to spark some things, be it with fake this or an onside that. Time will tell. But certainly I think that Penn State will do some things this week, T. Frank, and we'll get into it more in the last segment of the show. Do some things this week that maybe we haven't seen before. There's no guarantee it's going to work.
Yeah, that was the thing we said going into the Oregon game of like, it felt like there was something more in the passing game, and there was like different concepts that they played against Oregon. There was no guarantee that it works. And there was something earlier in the chat. David wanted to ask why Penn State isn't using Nick Singleton in the screen game against the blitz. It is, so I'll agree, like, why is their screen game so bad? Because, David, they have been trying that. They've been trying to do that. Against Iowa, a shovel pass, a delayed shovel pass, is a screen. And the fact that it didn't work multiple times tells you something that I don't really know what to do with that. Like, the execution was poor. And honestly, like, Iowa got them on not blitzing into those looks. Like, Iowa was really good about timing up when they blitzed, and Penn State was bad at timing up when to call those plays. So they haven't been calling them at the right time, but also when they've done it, they have executed in a way that the defense has stopped it. So the screen game has been totally ineffective this year, and you're right to point that out, but it's not that they're not trying, it's that they've been so ineffective that they decided it's not a valuable thing they can do this year. Again, another problem. Like, that is another, you're taking another tool away from a team because it has had zero success with it, and you're not going to keep running plays that you have zero success with. So there is that, it's a valid question. But I guess I would just phrase it differently of why has the screen game been so bad this year? When it has, like, that's not something it's been it was great last year. Like, they set up multiple screens that were good last year.
Yeah, I think to the point someone's making in the chat, the lack of Penn State's ability to throw the ball down the field is not likely helping in that regard.
Yep.
The fact that teams are keying on the run game and saying to Penn State beat us through the air, not helping in that regard. But still, you would think there'd be some way to get that going every now and again. Hasn't been the case, but to the point of many of the comments so far this morning on this edition of BWI Live, hasn't been the case is kind of the theme of this season, and so it's sometimes, unfortunately, is as simple as that. And so for Penn State, they continue to search for answers. Haven't found them yet. We'll see if they do this weekend. T. Frank, before we get into our Ohio State Penn State preview, let's get into some best bets. All right, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3, ON and the number 3, ON3, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app at sign-up and use bonus code ON3. Deposit at least $10 and your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code ON3 when you sign up, ON and the number 3. Sign up at BetMGM today. Make this college football season one for the history books. Make it legendary. I got two this week that will flow right into our Penn State Ohio State preview. One that looks backward at the 2025 Penn State season. FIU catching 3.5 tonight. I think that is a really interesting team. Their record so far is not necessarily as good as I thought it would be in Conference USA play, but they are 3-4 on the year at this point, playing at Missouri State. And I believe Devon Townley, former Penn State player, is with Missouri State. I could be wrong on that, but I'm fairly confident that is the case. At any rate, FIU is catching 3.5 tonight, just like that team, like that offense. So they are our best bet for me. And then let's get into the two, T. Frank, what will lead into our Penn State Ohio State conversation. First one, not the biggest fan in the world of bets that are minus 150, but it caught my eye immediately this morning while preparing for this segment. BetMGM offering a prop bet that both Penn State and Ohio State will score 10 points apiece at minus 150. It just jumped off the page to me. It may be a little steep in terms of the price you have to pay to wager on it. $15 will win you 10. But I just think that there's a lot of people who are assuming Penn State's going to get shut out in this game or that they won't score a touchdown. I'm not saying they're scoring 21 to 24 to 27 points, but I do think they'll find some way, somehow. And again, they don't really care how the 10 points come. They don't care if they all come in the fourth quarter against a fourth-string Ohio State defense. If they come on an opening kickoff touchdown return and then Penn State only adds, a late field goal or a touchdown, or if this game is super competitive and shocks everyone. Certainly I think Fox executives would love that for this big noon kickoff game. But I think
what if it ends 13-10? How about that?
Well, then you will get your money back at BetMGM as a push. But I just think that there's some points coming in this game for both, certainly Ohio State, and I just think even though the Ohio State defense very, very good, and Penn State, we all know the situation with Ethan Grunkemeyer and the way this offense is, I think they can get Katron Allen going a bit. I think they find the end zone at some point. I just need 6 points somewhere else along the way, or 3 and a safety if you really want to get desperate. But I just think that is a good way to maybe attack this game this weekend.
Yeah, I think both teams. So 10 or more points. So they have to score more than 10?
Yeah, correct.
Oh, I can see Penn State scoring 10 points. That's a tough line. I can see 10.
Let me just confirm
13,
that,
sure. I can see 13. I don't. Again, like Ryan Day said it earlier this week, Penn State's they have talent. Like it's the way the talent is fitting together. It's not that they are untalented. And if they found a way to make it all work better in the bye week, I would say that's reasonable to think they can score 13 points.
It is 10 or more. I did have that in my notes so it's 10 or more. So 10 gets the job done for you. 13, 10 would
10
get the
for
job
sure
done. Yes. So I think I think it's a good play. I really do. I think Penn State, is not going to get shut out in this game, and I think they hit double digits. Again, that kind of leads into my next one, which is the over 43.5 in this contest. Like, for all the warts of this Penn State team, and obviously the ones on defense have played a role in this, but they're 5-2 to the over this year. The Ohio State offense has not necessarily been absolutely lighting it up, and certainly they have the players to do it, especially against this Penn State defense. But they got some run game things that Ryan Day feels better about their run game than seemingly everybody in Columbus does, based on what I've read and then listened to yesterday.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, here in a minute. But I do think that over 43.5 is a fair place to go this week. I was looking, and a lot of people, of course, if you look at the bet percent splits on BetMGM, a lot of people obviously lining up to take Ohio State in the under. They're seeing like a 27-7 kind of a game, 32-6, something like that. Again, if I think Penn State's getting more than 10, that means I feel fairly confident Ohio State will get more than 30. 32-10 obviously would be a loser in this regard, but almost anything else would get the job done. So I like it. I think the over hits in Penn State. A team that has only covered once this season and has usually been kind of back and forth on the overs and unders in the last 11 and a half years. Is definitely more of an over team this year. Its defense forever has made that not necessarily the case. But it is now. So I like the over. It's my last best bet of the week, T. Frank. Curious for your thoughts on that.
I struggle with this one. I don't have a point total in my head yet. Like I'm still working through like how I think this is going to play out. Initially, like when I started the week before, because Ohio State comes in as the boogeyman when you don't know anything about them. And so I was like, oh yeah, 21-point beat down. Like, I see that. And then I watched Ohio State and I'm like, maybe. So I don't really know where this is going to land. I think Ohio State gets into the high 20s minimum. And then it's what Penn State's able to do. And with the offense and the mystery, I don't know. As much as I said, I think they can get 12, 10 to 13 points. I don't know about more than that. I don't know where the points would come from after that.
Well, we'll find out. So FIU plus 3.5, the Penn State, Ohio State to both score 10, and the over 43.5. In that game are this week's BetMGM best bets. Let's get you a disclaimer, and then we'll move on to the rest of our preview.
See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, and 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer now for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are not withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossings Casino and Hotel.
Penn State, a 20.5-point underdog at BetMGM. This game again kicks off at noon. I was stunned this morning. I was getting together a post that we'll have up over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com later this week. What are the odds in your mind that Penn State, as of the end of October, has not played on Fox yet this year? Like, that is just stunning to me, that this will be the first time they will be on big noon kickoff. It's interesting because Penn State fans obviously hate that time slot. Ohio State fans don't love it either, without question. And Penn State has, for reasons that no Penn State fans really want to talk about anymore, or talk about endlessly either way, has not found itself in this big noon kickoff spot. So they're there this week.
The 3:30 has been great. I've really enjoyed from a personal standpoint. 3:30 is great. If there could be maybe like a 2:00 tip-off time, kickoff time, that would be ideal, right? So just so you get done at 5, we work for a couple hours after the game, but so you're not getting done in the middle of the night, or you're not starting at 5 a.m. We'll have our, this is a great time to shamelessly plug the Penn State Football Tailgate Show, 9 a.m. You can join us at the Penn State Hotel and Conference Center at the Legends Pub for breakfast at 9 a.m. Everyone loves to tailgate at 9 a.m. But join us. Have a good time. We'll be talking about the game and breaking more stuff down.
Liquid breakfast may be the best way to get through this one. We'll see. I keep going back and forth on this, T. Frank. On one hand, and with everyone else that just sees this being an absolute blowout that is never competitive from the start. And then I go back to the 2019 game where Penn State, that's the last time Penn State was this big of an underdog going out to Ohio State. And, I mean, the box score is just gruesome in terms of Penn State things, except for the turnover box. They had 3 turnovers. Yeah. Penn State turned those into 10 third-quarter points to have that game close going into the fourth quarter, really against all odds. And then, they had Will Levis had to come into the game. Penn State was not able to ultimately pull off the upset, which has, of course, been a common theme in this series over the last 12 and a half years, and certainly to some degree before that. So, I mean, I'm torn between thinking that the fact that everyone in the world, more or less, I mean, outside of the Lasch building, thinks that this is going to be a blowout. And a lot of times when everyone is on the groupthink side of a game, it doesn't work out that way. And also just looking at the reality of where these two teams are at this point.
I'm leaning more to the side of they're not going to get blown out. And that's kind of what I was saying in the best bet segment is they have pride and talent, and I understand that both teams are coming off a bye week, so there is a little bit of that. Both teams have that same advantage, but Penn State needed it more, obviously. And I do think that there is an opportunity here for them to make a statement by playing a close game. And I also think that this Ohio State team is good, and this always comes off the wrong way, right? Because this is the problem I have, is like my expectations come in here, and they land somewhere in the same spot every year. But like a good team, another complete team that Ohio State faces, there are vulnerabilities on this team. Does Penn State have the ability to take advantage of them? Probably not. But, when we get through the offense and the defense here, like there are ways a Penn State team from the previous years could attack this defense, and there are ways that this defense would have advantages over the Ohio State offense, because they are, as much as they have these kind of cheat codes, right? They have the elite talent player that just makes everything better at key positions. They're not 1 through 45 all going to go to the NFL. Like that's not how this roster looks to me on film. And so Penn State can play with them, but how long can that happen? And how does Ohio State's style, that's the other thing, is the style of offense they're playing, is Penn State 2024. It is not what you think of Justin Fields lining up in the shotgun and chucking it deep to Chris Olave on every single play. That's not who they are anymore, and they've tried to not be that team for several years now. So their style in themselves limits the explosiveness and like the blowout nature of these games by Ryan Day talking about the run game, like starting every conversation about the run game.
Right, and that has been a talking point, again, in Columbus for the majority of this season. It was, again, during his Tuesday news conference. You talked about our friends over at Letterman Row on the On3 Network. I believe Ryan Day is talking, maybe right now, some point early-ish today, or certainly earlier than Terry Smith will, who's talking around 6 o'clock tonight. So I'm sure it'll come up again. But, yeah, I mean, that was my thought on this Ohio State offense, looking at it both from a statistical standpoint and the games I've been able to watch this year that Ohio State has played, is that a previous Penn State defense, I think, would have matched up. Not great. There's not a lot of great things to do to completely shut out Jeremiah Smith. There's just not. Julian Sayin is a really productive quarterback, and I like the running backs that they have as well. But I think there's a Penn State defense from past years, maybe even last year's, that you would have looked at it a little bit differently going into this game. But with what Penn State's actual defense this year has put on tape, it's hard to conjure up the thought that what Penn State has been able to do to slow down Ohio State in past games, that even they've come out on the losing side, it's hard to conjure up this defense, the thought of this defense doing the same.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, is if they could stop the run, I think that this would be a ball game. But they've been leaking run yardage the whole year, going back to the non-conference season. And so if you're constantly in 2nd and 2, it gives the opportunity for the offense to convert. 3rd and 2, 4th and 2, it doesn't matter. Like, teams are not afraid of this defensive line and just converting short yardage downs or even converting medium yardage downs to then get to stay on the field and extend these drives. So the more opportunities you're giving Julian Sayin, who's a really good quarterback, and the more opportunities you're giving Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith, that's the threat here. But if you had an offense that could put them in a defense that could put them in 3rd and 9, they're not going to convert every single one of those. But, I say that, and then, of course, Penn State's pass rush has also not been great this year. I'd say that the opportunity here is that Julian Sayin is not a scrambler. He can extend plays, and I don't want to say he's not going to do that because, of course, like he's going to have the opportunity if it's there to take it.
After I watched the Iowa quarterback run 67 yards or whatever it was, like everyone's a scrambler until they're not, as far as I'm concerned when they play.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. That's the problem is like you could say he's not a scrambler, and that quarterback. The thing is that quarterback, the mentality was he wanted to run. Right. They had him in option plays. He was a goal line runner. He was integrated into the running game on the offensive side. Sayin is not. Sayin is a pocket passer in the kind of old school sense where he's going to extend plays, but he's not trying to get out and run into the secondary. But obviously he can. He's not immobile. And so like that might be one saving grace in this game. But again, like you just said, like I'm not going to count on that happening for sure. So yeah, the defensive line is going to be pivotal to how Penn State plays in this game and whatever they could figure out to do to help that this week. And this is the thing is like Ohio State's offensive line is pretty good. You know, they've got some good movers up front, but I don't think the right side of the offensive line is particularly strong. The right guard position is they've been talking about their right guard position like Penn State has been talking about their linebackers of like, okay, when are you making a change? This isn't working. This isn't good enough. When are you going to make a change? 77 is a big dude, big, physical, has a stance that is like two people wide. It's 1.5 linemen wide. I don't know why he lines up that wide, but he's out there to be a physical intimidator and enforcer in the run game. But they're not against good teams like in Illinois. They were not really moving guys off the ball. However, they do have more physicality. And I think it was Rob said days earlier teams lost to teams that were better up front. That's a recent point of emphasis for them to their own detriment against Michigan. Absolutely. They have been trying to play with more balance. Coming in this game, they are exactly 50-50 in called pass plays and called run plays. They are absolutely trying to get balance in their offense. And it's led to them having like, you know, a non-Ohio State lead at halftime, a 17-0 lead at halftime. If they did not have as good of a defense as they do, they would not be thought of the same way that they are right now.
Yeah, so Josh, comment here. Josh Padilla saw his most snaps of the season against Wisconsin. I expect to see him more moving forward. Yeah, I mean, that was the sense I got listening to Ryan Day's talk on Tuesday, so certainly agree with you there, Archer 452. Yeah, so I don't know if I'm going to get around to writing this week. I would like to, but if there's two things on defense that are going to change this game and send it in a direction we're not expecting right now, it's the Penn State defensive line finding a level of consistent play that it has not yet done. And it's turnovers, obviously. That goes for any game. But those would be the two things that stand out to me defensively for Penn State in this matchup. What about on offense, T. Frank? Penn State, like we said, ad nauseum goes with a backup quarterback to the horseshoe second start for Ethan Grunkmeyer. It got Katron Allen going at Iowa. Certainly a very, very good game for him. Maybe you see some different receiver combinations this week. I mean, and you look at this Ohio State defense and where it ranks statistically. Matt Patricia picked up the baton from Jim Knowles and ran with it. I mean, there's been very little drop-off. A lot of different guys in this defense making plays compared to last year, but still got, arguably the best defender in the Big Ten on their side of the field and will make this a challenge for Ethan Grunkmeyer and co.
So I have a problem in that I don't really like the style of this defense, and then my bias creeps in that they don't have a star pass rusher. They don't have a guy, and they don't get consistent pressure with four. So and that's not necessarily even the point of this defense. And so it's every defense has a what's the surprise? Defense is about surprising you with players in positions that you weren't expecting and trying to gain an advantage on the offense through that. And this defense is where's the blitzer coming from? Where are they dialing up pressure to get them free to the quarterback? But if you just don't make mistakes, which I know is a big if for this team, but a lot of teams don't make mistakes. That's the thing. A lot of teams don't make mistakes. If you go and watch the Illinois game, Luke Altmaier had all day to throw. Like he was sitting back there, pressure 4-3, it didn't matter. They were not getting home until late in the game when it was an obvious pass rushing situation when, the offense had put up enough points. This is an attrition team. They don't make splash negative plays. Their best thing is that they have this hybrid front where they run odd and even fronts. They can move in between those very easily. Arvell Reese is their hybrid linebacker that is sometimes a Sam walked up and playing the edge, and sometimes he's playing off-ball linebacker. He's their best pass rusher from a productivity standpoint and from a pressure standpoint. I think Caden Curry, like, he's had one true sack since entering Big Ten play. There is a world where Ethan Grunkmeyer has a ton of time to throw. The problem is, what does he do with that? What is the alarm bell in his head? And does he sit back there and say, I'm okay, right? So not panic about, like, I've held onto the ball too long. There are plays in this defense to be made because they play so much single high safety defense, cover 3, cover 1. And they do mix and match with off coverage and press man coverage, so it looks like zone sometimes. But what this is about is if you're going to blitz, you are leaving holes in the secondary, and it's whether or not you can find them, and the quarterback can take advantage of those. But wherever the safety rotates, if you throw towards the rotation or away from the rotation, there's a seam. And so, like, there is opportunity, especially with Andy Kotelnicki's love of 4 verts. There is an opportunity you could find that in this game. Now, they also do play cover 2, and if they just come out and say, okay, we're going to do what Oregon did, then Penn State, I think, is in trouble. But if they do what their base defense is, which is to play a lot of single high safety and have those robber players try to jump passes underneath, there are plays to be made here, and there is opportunity for the quarterback to throw. Nobody's done it yet, so I don't want to say, like, Penn State's going to be the team to do it, but I look at this defense, and I don't go, this is a shutdown, dominant defense that you have no chance of beating, because they just have some structural things about them that the right team could take advantage of. Now, they are so talented in the secondary to take away a lot of those obvious open passing lanes. And like when they go into man coverage and they clamp down on guys, linebacker to safety, they have the horses to cover just about anybody. And that's like that's their cheat code. That's their ace in the hole of, we'll just chuck it up to Jeremiah Smith and Cardinal Tate on offense. And if we need to, we'll play cover 1. And then you don't have any receivers to get open. And Penn State does not have anybody that goes, oh, wow, that's a matchup problem for Ohio State. But every once in a while, somebody does get open against this defense. It's just the quarterback never gets there because college quarterbacks are not like NFL quarterbacks who can read the coverage and then find the open player very quickly and easily. There's a reason this defense fell out of favor in the NFL. There's a reason that it does not work consistently is because it de-emphasizes talent on the defensive line. It de-emphasizes pass rush, and it emphasizes this do your job 1/11th. But with these players that are ultra talented and having those lockdown matchup nightmares, they are making this work really well. And it is a problem for Penn State. I'm not trying to downplay that, but I do think at some point this defense is going to be tested by a good team. It'd be fun to see Penn State find a way to do it because that is like, even if you lose, but you are the one that puts blood in the water for everybody else, Penn State fans, I think I would find that fascinating, right? That like you expose the weakness here that nobody else could do. And then even if you lose, maybe you take this team down with you in the long run of providing the blueprint, which we've seen teams do in the past in a losing effort.
Yeah, we have, and it's just weird to talk about Penn State football going into November in that kind of a role, but that's where the Nittany Lions are as they get ready to head to Ohio State. Steven, I saw you in the chat, buddy. You were wound up this morning. Thanks for the super chat donation. Christian is right. The Blue White Illustrated message boards are hopping over in the Lions Den forum. You can join for $1 for the first 7 days at bluewhiteillustrated.com. Just scrolling through the rest of the chat here. Penn State has its work cut out for it at Ohio State Saturday at noon on Fox. We'll have live coverage from out there. T. Frank will have the pregame tailgate show at 9 a.m. on Saturday. The guys will be back for the BWI Live recruiting show and have predictions and preview some more on Penn State, Ohio State on Thursday. Any final thoughts, T. Frank, as we wrap up the October 29th, final Wednesday, BWI Live of October?
No, just follow along what we do, and we'll be back with more content. Like I said, we're gonna be getting some here with Spencer to talk about Ohio State, Penn State. We haven't done one of these in the past where we have these kind of crossover events, and that's my bad. Like I get so caught up in my own rhythm and process, and like what I have is I have 10 out of 10 slots filled in my day, and then it's like I should add an 11th slot. And so I'm trying to do that this week. So hopefully everything, like the plates don't stop spinning and you don't miss something here at Blue White Illustrated. But we're trying to provide you even more content here in the Ohio State week, which still one of the biggest games of the season, one of the biggest weeks of the season for Penn State football, even if it is from that pride standpoint. So follow us along, subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, and we'll keep doing that for you.
Yeah, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel so when new content comes, be it a crossover edition of a Penn State Ohio State preview, the next live show, or Terry Smith's post-practice interviews or post-game interviews, you get notified when those come up. And don't forget as well to subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com to follow the Penn State coaching search and the rest of the Nittany Lions 2025 season. Plenty of insight and intel to come over the days, weeks, and months ahead. That'll do it for this edition of BWI Live. That's Thomas Frank Carr. I'm Greg Pickle from Blue White Illustrated. Catch the guys tomorrow. Catch T. Frank later today, tomorrow, always here on the YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcast. And we'll talk to you next time.